Police in London say they've arrested a Colorado mother accused of killing two of her own children before allegedly fleeing to the UK. 35-year-old Kimberlee Singler is now facing extradition. She appeared in court for the first time yesterday.
Welcome back, guys. I trust you've been staying safe. Now, 35-year-old Kimberlee Singler is in a very precarious position. Today's true crime story is coming to us from Colorado in the United States of America. But just so we have a background to what is happening, I'll go back and take it from the beginning. On the 19th of December 2023, at around 12:30 a.m., police responded to a 911 report of an alleged burglary that had occurred at an apartment complex on the 5300 block of the Palomino Ranch Point in Colorado. Now, as is expected, police would rush to the crime scene in an attempt to either avert the crime or attend to any victims of the crime if it has already happened. So, when they got there, they found 35-year-old Kimberlee Singler lying on the ground. Alongside her were her three kids. One of them is 11 years old, and then the two others are 9 years old and 7 years old. In that order, the 7-year-old is a boy, the 9-year-old girl, and the other person that is 11 years old is also a girl. So 2 daughters and 1 son. As it will turn out, unfortunately, the 7-year-old and the 9-year-old were deceased from several injuries that they had sustained as a result of this alleged burglary. But fortunately, at the time, Kimberlee Singler and her 11-year-old daughter were still alive, although they had also sustained some injuries. So, as is expected, they were treated at the scene by emergency responders and then taken to local hospitals for further treatment. And then investigations started. Now, in the onset of the investigation, it was expected to be probably an open and shut one where a burglary had occurred and maybe it had escalated to something else which had led to the unaliving of the 2 kids. And it would have been more like some of the other cases in the past. But as investigations were ongoing, things took a sudden shocking turn because the police found that the 911 call was actually fake. Yeah, they found that the 911 call that had reported the whole thing was actually fake. And this began to skew the investigation in a totally different direction, such that Kimberlee Singler, who at the initial stages was being looked at as a possible victim of this burglary, was now being looked at as a possible suspect in the unaliving of her 7-year-old and 9-year-old kids. And just like that, a possible murder case was on the hands of the police. So they brought in Kimberlee, who initially was responding to whatever the police was doing with her to further the investigations when she was being seen as a victim. But when the cards changed and she was now being viewed as a possible suspect, she turned hostile towards the police, such that she was no longer cooperating with the police. And in as much as the police were doing their best to try and get her to cooperate, it didn't take long for Kimberlee Singler to just take a stance where she wasn't even accommodating towards the police at all. And eventually, she was supposed to show up on December 16th of 2023, but things just went south. She never showed up to have any conversation with the police with regards to what they were supposed to do, and helped with the investigation to get to the bottom of what was going on. So the whole thing had happened on the 19th. She had a prior issue on the 16th of December, just 3 days to that, where she was supposed to have shown up with regards to a custody hearing between herself and her ex-husband. But when she was now being viewed as a suspect, Kimberlee was now going very cold towards the police. Subsequent arrangements where she needed to engage with the police leading up to the Christmas holidays, she failed to show up, and she was now being looked for by the police. It will turn out that Kimberlee was nowhere to be found. She was actually nowhere to be found within the state, and the police started mounting a search for her. This was very odd, given that she is a grieving mother who has lost 2 kids, and a 3rd kid is actually in the hospital, and she herself had sustained injuries. So where would she go? After all, you are supposed to see to the burial of the first 2 kids you've lost, and also see to the healing of the one at the hospital. Not to talk about the fact that she herself also needed time to heal and also needed medical attention. So what would be so important that Kimberlee Singler would decide that despite all these responsibilities and expectations of her as a mother, in this particular incident, she would up and vanish? Because that was what literally had played out. She had literally vanished. And as was expected, the police widened their investigations, where they rather realized that at a point in time, she was no longer even in the state. So they needed to expand their tax net, and the FBI had also stepped in, of course, as was expected. Fast forward, as at the 30th of December 2023, Kimberlee Singler has now been arrested. And guess where she was found at? She was found in the United Kingdom. Yeah, she left the United States, left her 2 deceased kids, left her daughter who was on admission seeking medical attention for injuries sustained, and escaped to the UK. It seems more like she was running away, but I don't know if that is the actual case, but that is how it seemed. And she has now been arrested. And the questions are, 1, why did she make that move? She's a suspect, and obviously per the eyes of the law, she's innocent until proven guilty. So even if she's a suspect, they will still have to prove in court. But taking actions like this begin to make her look more suspect, and probably someone would argue more guilty. Because why would she run? What was she doing in the UK? Especially when you had appointments with the police with regards to investigations into this issue. For me, these are some of the red flags. And someone would say, okay, so if she's being looked at as a suspect in the possible unaliving of her kids, why would she do that? She's their mom. So why would she even be considered as a possible suspect in the unaliving of her kids? Well, someone will call it motive. So the question then was, what is the motive? So investigations kept on digging, and it turns out that there are court documents which corroborate that Kimberlee Singler has been in a serious divorce case with her ex-husband, Kevin Wentz, which goes as far back as 2018, and the divorce was finally granted sometime in 2020 or thereafter. But then, they were still battling over the custody of the kids. And at a point in time, Kimberlee Singler had tried to pin a claim of domestic violence on her ex-husband, but it wasn't successful. Some are saying that this was her way of trying to get the man out of the lives of their kids, and it failed. But it went on further to get to a point where the courts had actually ruled in favor of the ex-husband, such that Kimberlee Singler had been ordered just a few days before December 19th, allegedly by the court, to transfer the kids to her ex-husband. And she failed to comply with that. And the days that followed led up to the event that took place, unfortunately, on the 19th of December, where now 2 of these kids are unalived. So the question is, did she do it? And if she did, why did she do it? These are the theories out there. The first theory is that maybe she didn't do it. Maybe there's another player in this case that is yet to be identified, and maybe Kimberlee Singler is telling the truth. But most people I've discussed this case with do not sort of lean in that direction, because nothing is even pointing to that possibility from the police investigation. Now, the second theory is that Kimberlee Singler did this to her kids herself. And someone may ask, why would she do that? She's their mom. Yeah, the second theory is being supported by the possibility that she did this based on the fact that she was losing her kids. So it was more from the angle of, if I can't have them, then nobody will have them. That is what the second theory is out there. And this is what most people are leaning towards, because it's also a sort of tendency that some people have, especially when it comes to instances like this of very difficult divorce cases where the couple, instead of dissolving the marriage amicably, seem to be trying to get at each other through any opportunity they get. In such cases, you could find that one spouse wants to get at the other by holding the kids away from the other. And if it gets to a point where the spouse feels like he or she is losing the kids, people can get crazy at their point of desperation. And that is where the second theory is hinging on, that Kimberlee Singler probably got desperate and got frustrated and bitter when the court ruled against her that she is supposed to return the kids to their father. And maybe this was what just worsened everything. Because as at the 16th of December, Singler was actually supposed to have dropped the kids at the CSPD Stretson Hills substation, but then she never showed up. She never showed up. So fast forward from there, her ex-husband's attorney asked the county judge to grant the ex-husband possession of his children since the mother had violated their child custody agreement, and this was granted. This was 3 days before this incident. So the second theory is what I am leaning towards, although I'm not saying that is the fact, but I'm with the police on that tangent that she is a suspect. It's very possible she did this, and especially looking at the fact that she appears to have fled to the United Kingdom at such a crucial moment in this case, it makes her look more suspect. And I'm not the court, I can't say she's guilty, but she's looking very guilty or very suspicious, or she's looking possibly guilty. But then that's not to say she is guilty actually. But let's see how this case goes in court. This is going to be a very interesting one because it looks like Kimberlee Singler as a mother has a lot of questions to answer. If she's found guilty, she would have to answer to the law. She would have to answer to the memory of the 2 kids that have been unalived, if it's found she did it. And if it's found she did it, she would also have to answer to the 3rd child, her 11-year-old daughter who survived, for what she may have done to her and her siblings. And she would also have to answer to her ex-husband, the families of both sides, and actually to everybody out there, and explain how come she did this. And I don't think any explanation would be justifying of this action if she's found guilty of it.
Kimberlee Singler is now in a British jail this morning, waiting to hear if she'll be sent back to the United States to face murder charges in the deaths of two of her children. Police in Colorado Springs tell CBS News that Singler was arrested Sunday without incident in London's Kensington neighborhood. Now, this puts an end to the international manhunt, which began on December 19th after police responded to a burglary call at Singler's Colorado home. When officers arrived, they found her 7-year-old son and 9-year-old daughter dead. Singler and her 11-year-old daughter were also injured. Now, at first, authorities treated Singler as a victim, and she did cooperate with police. But after police determined the 911 call she made was false, a warrant was issued for her arrest the day after Christmas. On December 29th, police said she'd likely fled the area. Now, court records show Singler was in a long-running legal battle over her children with her ex-husband. In a statement, that ex-husband says he is relieved that the search has ended and hopes Kimberlee will be extradited to Colorado soon. Here in London, she is expected to appear before the Westminster Magistrates Court by video link on January 29th.
Personally, I said this in my previous video and I'm saying this again. I've actually said this in some of my videos. If you get into a relationship, marriage especially, please be ready for your responsibilities and try and make it work. Both parties should try and make it work. Both parties should accept to be held accountable and hold themselves accountable as well. Respect each other. Learn to forgive. If you are wrong, learn to accept your mistakes. Don't try to pay back or punish the other party if it's even in a divorce case. At the end of the day, the one who suffers the most is the children. There's an old African saying that when two elephants are fighting, it's actually the ground which suffers, and that is playing out here. I'm not blaming the husband, and I'm also not really blaming Kimberlee Singler. Of course, unless she's found guilty, then I'll really blame her, but I'm not really blaming her or the ex-husband. All I'm saying is, for the fact that the divorce case was that keenly and reportedly stressfully being battled like that, I think it puts a strain on the kids to the point that there are allegations that even at a point Kimberlee was trying to sort of make her husband guilty or look guilty for an alleged domestic violence against her. The moment you start going to this extent, you think you want to win against the other, but you are just harming your children, because whatever you do, he is the father of the kids and she is the mother of the kids. That is something you can never change. Even if you change it on a document, biologically you can't change that, and that has an effect on the kids. Please, if you are watching this video, share it with people. Let's try to keep the institution of marriage strong and safe, peaceful and homely for our children. But then, in case it gets to the point of a divorce, God forbid though, let's not make it toxic, because at the end of the day, you are harming yourself and your children, not the other spouse. So I'm following this case and I'll bring you the updates as and when they are due. But then, as it stands now, Kimberlee Singler has been arrested in the UK, and it's very likely she's going to be extradited back to the United States to face justice, because a Colorado court had actually set a $10 million bond on her. And it's also been expected that possibly by the end of this month, she's going to be back in the US to face charges. As and when there are updates, I'll bring them to you. But until then, kindly subscribe, turn on post notifications, share our video. This video could be a solution to someone's problem. It could highlight certain repercussions to some people that could help prevent catastrophes. Do not sit on this, just share it, and let's help each other make the world a better place. I'll catch you on the next one.